OK, let's start with the Sunday Telegraph then, and their headline, Bottle of the Bridge. They refer to Chelsea's victory over Liverpool. Julian, it means it's 3 defeats in a week for Liverpool, 2 in the Premier League, 2 late ones in the Premier League, and, of course, that defeat to Galatasaray in the Champions League. Is this a blip or big reasons to worry?
I think a bit of both, really. Last season they never lost 3 in a row. They only once lost twice. That was back in March, so it took them a long time to get there. This time, only at the beginning of October, and it's 3 defeats. It was 3 very difficult away games to start with, to say. Away at Palace, away at Galatasaray, and then away at Chelsea. But for all the time where they find solutions, even when they were not playing great last season or even earlier this season, sometimes with late goals, sometimes with something Slot would do or individual brilliance from a Salah or somebody else. In the last 3 games, they haven't been able to do that. And really, I think they lack balance, they lack structure, which is maybe the most worrying of that defeat yesterday, was that you never felt they were really in control of that game. Even in the second half, when they were playing better, they never really felt in control.
Yeah, inside the Sunday Times, the report from Sam Wallace says Liverpool looking ragged as Esteval lands killer blow. And inside it says, for Arne Slot's team, this was the 3rd straight defeat in 8 days. There were times when they looked impressive, but they finished the game with 2 midfielders in the back 4. And having plundered so many late goals themselves this season, they finally discovered last week as well how it felt to be on the other end of it. Jason, you know, the start to the season that they had and all of those late goals, was there a feeling of unsustainability about it all?
Yes, there was either one or 2 things happening, wasn't it? One, it's a mark of champions that you can keep going and score a goal late on, which everyone was trying to convince themselves was the case. Or it's a team slightly getting away with it. And I was at quite a few of those games. And even that first game against Bournemouth, they were actually quite lucky to win that match. And there's a bit of alarm bells ringing then about that. And obviously they did fantastically well to then go and win so many games late on. But actually, in the last week, maybe that's been balanced out a little bit by the reality of the fact that this is a team in transition. You know, they've done a very bold summer. They've made a huge number of changes. It's clearly Arne Slot and Michael Edwards and Richard Hughes putting their mark on the team. This is no longer a Jurgen Klopp side. This is now Arne Slot, Michael Edwards, Richard Hughes saying this is the Liverpool going forward. Now, to do all of that in one summer was always going to be quite risky. Make so many changes. Although in saying that, the team that started yesterday, most of them were there last season. Only a couple of new players in Kirkes, and obviously the goalkeeper they bought anyway. But I think they've also tried to change the style of play, be more expansive, and that's going to make them a little more open as well. So Slot's trying to put his imprint on the team that are champions. And in itself, that's quite an interesting experiment to do that. I think there's always going to be a difficult period for them. I think in some ways they did better than we thought by winning those games at the start. I know it's a bit weird saying that, having spent so much money, but actually, you know, they look like a team in transition to me. And to do that in this situation is quite risky. And I think that there's risks I've sort of come against them this last week. They've obviously been caught out and going into the international period now they've got to try and sort it all out. But I think it's a work in progress for Liverpool, and I think they are some way off being the team they want to be.
Jackie, Jason says work in progress. Jamie Redknapp actually described it as a mini crisis yesterday. It's quite bizarre to use the word crisis with a team that's second in the league. Yes, 1 out of 2 wins in the Champions League, but with the team in transition, are there any specific problems that you can see that have kind of developed over the games that they've played so far this season?
I think the reason it's being described as a crisis by Jamie Carragher, who would know because he watches probably every kick of Liverpool, is because of the size of the club and what they achieved last season. But I think last season, because the new manager came in, there weren't so many changes, were there, structurally in terms of the team. It was almost easier to get that kind of fluency, whereas now it's a case of spending £400 million or so, signing these huge players and a young player in Florian Wirtz. And people are thinking, oh, we'll just take this brilliant guy from Germany in Wirtz and we'll just slot him into this amazing Liverpool side and obviously things will be better. Oh, we got Isak. Obviously, we'll just score more goals. Ekitike, I think, looks fabulous, by the way, and he has slotted in. But then the manager's got far more issues to consider. You've got the off-pitch issues of players fitting into a new lifestyle, a new culture, a new place to live, all these things. The likes of Wirtz having to settle into a new team where he's not the main man, where he's got players like Gakpo, he's got Salah moving into the positions that he would traditionally own in Germany. You've got loads of different issues. And, of course, the fullback situation as well. Conor Bradley having to be taken off yesterday, being on a yellow card, really disrupted the flow. Kirkes, who somehow cost about £6 million more than Ryan Aït-Nouri, trying to work out how that happened. Perhaps they should have gone for Aït-Nouri instead, although Kirkes is a good player. Is he Liverpool standard? Is he up to the standard that Andy Robertson was at his best? There are all these different factors and question marks. And I think it's just a case of a huge club losing 3 in a row. 2 late ones are an absolute killer if you're a supporter of the club. And it is going to take time for these things to settle down. And last season, they took advantage of the fact that things weren't quite right at City, with Pep, with Phil Foden. And this time, all eyes are on Liverpool, and the expectations are huge now.
It seems bizarre to say, Julian, that given how much they spent, and we shouldn't forget how much they recouped as well in that transfer window. But are the answers to these problems that we're talking about with Liverpool at the moment within the squad, or are there other issues in that squad that they have to maybe rectify and go back into the market in January?
No, I don't think so. I think they've got a great squad overall. The only position really is a centre-back. They wanted Mark Gahey to have another centre-back. They could not sign him. Yeah. And then Leone obviously got injured on his first game, which is very unlucky. So now you're left with Konate, Van Dijk and Joe Gomez, who was on the bench yesterday, could have replaced Ibrahima Konate in that second half. Slot chose Gravenberch to play there, which I find a little bit surprising, to be fair. Gravenberch, great on the ball, probably better than Joe Gomez. So in your build-up phase, to have him there is good, but then he makes a massive mistakes on the Estevao goal that a defender, centre-back, probably like Joe Gomez would not have made. He would have been in line with Van Dijk. Cucurella would have been offside. Robertson also is at fault on that goal for not really checking where Estevao is. But Gravenberch in that position is strange, so centre-back is definitely a position they could do with somebody.
They must deeply regret not signing Mark Gahey. I mean, I think that deal was always there to be done the whole summer, and I find it fascinating they left it so late. It almost felt like they thought, well, we can do this. This will happen. We know Palace are desperate to sell because you're not going to sign a new contract. It will happen. And it didn't happen. And I think it's negligent of them not to have sorted out that position, because they went into the window wanting to sign Dean Howson, who then obviously went to Real Madrid. So they knew that centre-back was an issue for them, and Konate's going into the final year of his contract. How can you have this kind of big summer of fees and transfer spending and not sort out that key position? Because they're so dependent now on Van Dijk staying fit. If he gets an injury, they're going to look really short in that position. They're going to start moving players around, like maybe asking Gravenberch to play as a centre-half. Then you've got Szoboszlai playing a right-back, who's a midfielder sometime, and then you've got Gravenberch maybe playing as a centre-half. You're thinking, well, how have we managed to get into that situation where you've had this huge summer of an overhaul of the squad?
Is that what the problem is, Jackie? Because of the huge overhaul that Jason has mentioned there, it's impacted the players who were there already, because we saw Mohamed Salah, who had an iconic season last season, and it just really hasn't worked for him so far this season. Is that down to Salah himself and his form, or the changes that have been made and where his position is in the team now?
Frankly, it's impossible for us to get inside Mo Salah's head, isn't it? Let's be honest about that, although it'd be a very interesting place to reside. But all those factors that the guys have mentioned, they all play a part. They all add up, don't they? And I think not having that solid platform at the back and question marks over the full-back situation and being short at centre-half are really, really big issues. And then when you add into the squad dynamic, the fact that they have so many new players bedding in, I think it's easy from the outside just to look at the big green bit in the centre of the stadium and just think everything's about that. But it's not. It's about the dynamic off the field as well. And these things can take time. It's a huge overhaul. But those basics and the lack of a solid defence at the moment and the depth in there is a big issue. And that Gahey issue is huge.
I do think Salah isn't playing well. I think he's not having a good season so far. But obviously we don't want to sort of say anything more than that about him, because obviously he'll go and score on a mad run of scoring now. And I think when he's not playing well, the problem with Salah, he doesn't track back. And if you look at yesterday's game, Cucurella, was up and down.
That was the plan for Chelsea, yeah.
Exactly. So they're exploiting that as a weakness. Salah does not track back, because obviously he usually goes forward and scores goals. But if he's not scoring the goals, it becomes a problem for Liverpool. And I'm not saying it's a huge problem, but it is an issue. And as Julian said, it's something that Chelsea exploited.
And had he put that effort away after that phenomenal little pirouette flick from Florian Wirtz, then things might have been different. But he hasn't been at his best, and Liverpool have been so phenomenal with him at his best.
I mean, we focused on Liverpool just now. It'd be remiss of us not to speak about Chelsea, because this felt like a huge result for Chelsea and for their manager. We saw the pictures just then of him running down the touchline a la Jose Mourinho. And in Jonathan Northcroft's piece, who he was at the game, he said, look, they loved Jose, they loved Conte, and this was Maresca's moment of joining those rebel coaches, coming at the end of a pulsating 100-mile-per-hour to-and-fro football match that either of the sides might have won. The pressure, we have to say, especially at a club like Chelsea, because they have changed their managers at regular intervals in recent history, it was beginning to build on Enzo Maresca, wasn't it? How big
absolutely.
a result was that for him?
As big as that run, because for me that celebration is all about the relief, really, of like, if we hadn't won yesterday, so if Estevao doesn't score that goal, the pressure is mounting. I don't know, a draw at home is not a bad result against the champions, for sure, but it would not just be that result, it would be the previous ones as well. And for me, this reaction was just on the fact that he knew he was under pressure massively, and he was a bit under pressure last season. If they didn't finish top 4 last season, I think he might have been gone, to be fair. So I think this was, and he knew he was on a yellow, so he knew he was going to be sent off, which means the next game in the stands. But I really feel that it was pure relief of like, I was under massive pressure and this is going to buy me time.
I also think it helps him with the fans. Because I'm not sure the Chelsea fans have really, really taken to him. And the point that Johnny makes, and obviously my colleague Matt Law made the same point, is like we've seen Chelsea fans like their managers to be like that. They like them quite demonstrative. They like them quite sort of edgy and, you know, out there. So obviously Conte and Mourinho, they loved all that behaviour. So Maresca showing that emotion, they'll have loved that. And that was almost as important to him as the win, I think, to behave like that in front of Chelsea fans. Yeah,
there's a quote from Jonathan's piece where he says, Maresca turned to the fans, swishing his arms to hype them up. They had liftoff. Now, if you look at Chelsea's team yesterday, Levi Colwill, Wesley Fofana, Tosin all injured, Trevor Chalobah suspended, and the two defenders that they had in Badiashile and Achimpong, they went off injured during that game as well. With all of those ingredients put together, it makes this win even bigger for them, doesn't it, moving forward?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it would be seen as a platform for them. And I think huge credit to them. And we did spend the first part talking about Liverpool. But at the same time, we have to give a huge amount of credit to Chelsea for their desire and 7 players out and unavailable. And the way they performed and against a side who were desperate for the win as well. In Liverpool, a top side with so many top players. But I think that connection with the supporters, with Maresca, is absolutely huge. I mean, remember towards the end of last season, it looked as though they weren't going to get top 4. They just squeaked it. And I was in Poland for the final of the Conference League when they won that. You could just sense that that was a season turned around on its head and in his favour. But these clubs we're talking about are absolutely enormous clubs with huge amounts of pressure. And this show, from one week to the next, has different flavours. Amorim last week, the flavour, when we talk about it in the next part, is going to be different because of one win. So one performance, one win does count for so much at the moment. But I think Chelsea, with all that he's had to deal with all the upheaval of the squad for so many different reasons that are beyond his control, he has to make the best of them. I think that coming together yesterday was huge for them.
But I'd also say that they should be doing this as well. I mean, they've spent inordinate amount of money, and you mentioned all the players who are out, but they're still bringing on Hato and players who they've spent huge amounts of money for off the bench. The commentary last night was saying, well, 6 centre-halves out. Oh, here comes another centre-half. You know, they've got plenty of expensive players in that squad. They should be challenging. They should be beating Liverpool at times. You know, they should be up there, really. I don't think there's that many reasons for them not to be, you know, in the title race.
Jackie mentioned the word connection there, Julian. I know Mikel Arteta's always talked about that synergy with the fans. And she also mentioned that, look, they won a European trophy. They ended up winning the FIFA Club World Cup. They finished in the Champions League places as well. If that wasn't enough to get the connection, are you surprised that the start of this season, there has been that pressure on Maresca? Didn't he earn a bit of breathing space for what he'd achieved yesterday?
You know, I understand your question. The Club World Cup, I think, was a big one for them, even if they were lucky in a way to bring João Pedro halfway through, but they were brilliant in the final, especially against my PSG team. So you thought, OK, there's momentum there. But I think the start of the season has been a little bit underwhelming, apart from yesterday. Some of the performance that they've had, even in the Champions League, they defeated Bayern, although they didn't play too badly against Bayern Munich. Just you felt that things were not completely right. They would call Palmer in and out, the injury. The other injury to Liam Delap, to Levi Colwill that we mentioned. So things were not perfect.
Should they be cut a little bit of slack, though, very quickly, Julian, because they were in the Club World Cup, and we've seen the number of injuries that they've got. PSG have been suffering from a load of injuries as well. And I heard this stat that they're supposed to have 28 days after a season finishes and then 28 days prep time, and it's almost been slashed in half because of that FIFA Club World Cup. Yeah,
I mean, they can thank the FIFA Club World Cup for all those injuries. There's no doubt. Same for PSG. Same for the teams that went far in the tournament. And I think they're paying the price now. And that win is massive for them because of all the injuries that we mentioned.